She was pushed into a dark, endless well by her own stepsister, left for dead. But what happened next? Surviving against all odds, Mbuya returned to the village stronger, wiser, and ready to expose the lies that had kept her buried. You won't believe the shocking revenge she took. In the quiet and beautiful village of Kibana, surrounded by tall palm trees and rivers that sang gentle songs, there lived a young girl named Mbuya. She was known by everyone in the village, not because of riches or fancy clothes, but because of her kind heart and gentle smile. Mbuya lived with her father, Chief Runda, a respected elder of the village. He was a calm and wise man, loved by many for his fairness and compassion. After the passing of Mbuya's mother many years ago, Chief Runda raised Mbuya alone, pouring all his love and care into her upbringing. Though they lived simply, their home was filled with laughter, love, and strong values. Mbuya grew up helping the elderly, caring for animals, and learning the traditions of her people. She was not only beautiful on the outside, with glowing brown skin and bright eyes, but her spirit was gentle, patient, and full of grace. Even the elders would say, "That girl carries the spirit of the river, soft but strong." Every morning she would rise before the sun, sweep the compound, fetch water from the stream, and prepare breakfast for her father. She did it all with joy in her heart, and never once complained. Children in the village admired her. Women wished their daughters would grow up like her. Even the birds seemed to sing a little sweeter when Mbuya walked by. Chief Runda was proud of her, often saying, "Mbuya is my heart walking outside my body." He taught her how to speak with wisdom, how to treat others with respect, and how to hold her head high, even in difficult times. Though she had lost her mother, Mbuya never let grief turn her bitter. Instead, she became even more kind, more understanding, and more forgiving. But as peaceful and warm as her life seemed, fate was quietly turning the page. In the shadows of time, a storm was brewing, one that would test Mbuya's strength, silence her laughter, and nearly take everything from her. Still, even the darkest clouds cannot hide the sun forever. What no one knew was that the girl with the river spirit was destined for a journey so powerful, so painful, and so victorious that her name would be whispered in awe for generations to come. Everything changed the day Chief Runda brought home a new wife. Her name was Zalima, a woman from a distant village, tall and elegant, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She arrived with her daughter, Kasira, a girl about Mbuya's age, but the complete opposite in every way. While Mbuya was humble and kind, Kasira was loud, proud, and full of jealousy. From the very first moment they stepped into the compound, the warmth in Mbuya's home began to fade. At first, Mbuya tried to welcome them with open arms. She cooked their meals, offered her room to Kasira, and even helped Zalima unpack her things. But Zalima barely said thank you. Her eyes always carried a strange coldness when she looked at Mbuya, and Kasira treated her like a servant. Mbuya didn't understand why they disliked her so much. She thought maybe with time things would get better, but they only got worse. Chief Runda, who had once laughed freely and spent every evening talking with Mbuya, now spent more time with Zalima. Slowly, she began to control everything in the household. She would whisper into his ears at night, and by morning, rules would change. Mbuya was no longer allowed to sit at the main table during meals. Her clothes were taken away and given to Kasira. Chores that were once shared became Mbuya's alone. From fetching water to scrubbing floors, she worked from sunrise to sunset, while Kasira painted her nails and played in the sun. Zalima was clever in hiding her cruelty. In front of Chief Runda, she pretended to care for Mbuya, but the moment he turned his back, she became someone else. She would call Mbuya names, accuse her of stealing, and even slap her for small mistakes. Kasira followed her mother's footsteps, laughing whenever Mbuya was hurt, and mocking her whenever she cried. The once joyful home turned into a place of silence and sorrow for Mbuya. She missed the days when she and her father would sit under the baobab tree and talk for hours. Now, even when she tried to speak to him, Zalima would interrupt, complaining about some false wrongdoing Mbuya had done. Slowly, Chief Runda became distant, confused by the lies Zalima fed him daily. Still, Mbuya didn't fight back. Her heart remained pure. She believed that one day, the truth would shine like the morning sun. But deep down, something inside her was changing. The girl who once smiled at butterflies and sang with the birds was now learning to stay quiet, to watch, and to wait. Because sometimes, when life turns bitter, the sweetest revenge is simply surviving long enough to rise again. In just a few weeks, Mbuya's world turned upside down. The love and comfort she once knew disappeared like smoke in the wind. Zalima, with her sweet voice and clever lies, slowly poisoned Chief Runda's heart against his own daughter. She would cry fake tears and say things like, "Mbuya disrespects me. She refuses to accept me as her mother." Chief Runda, tired and wanting peace, began to believe her. His heart softened toward Zalima, while it hardened toward Mbuya. Kasira played her part well. She pretended to be innocent in front of Chief Runda, acting like she wanted to be close to Mbuya. But the moment he left for the council meetings or stepped outside, the mask came off. Kasira would smirk and snap her fingers, ordering Mbuya around like a maid. "Wash my clothes, Mbuya," she'd say. "Sweep my room again. The floor still looks dirty." And if Mbuya hesitated, Zalima would appear with cold eyes and harsh words, blaming her for being lazy and ungrateful. Soon, Mbuya wasn't just treated unfairly, she was made into a servant in her own home. Her beautiful dresses were taken away and given to Kasira, while Mbuya was left wearing old, faded wrappers. She no longer ate at the table but waited until everyone finished, only to pick at leftovers. She slept on a mat in the corner, while Kasira rested on soft cushions. Her hands, once used to weave beautiful baskets and collect wildflowers, were now cracked from endless work, fetching water, scrubbing pots, cooking, cleaning, and serving. What hurt the most was her father's silence. Chief Runda, once her protector, now walked past her like she was invisible. He didn't see the sadness in her eyes or the bruises on her hands. He didn't question why she no longer smiled. Mbuya tried to speak to him once, to remind him of the bond they used to share. But Zalima quickly interrupted. "You spoil this girl too much," she said, wrapping her arm around him. "Let her learn discipline." Mbuya swallowed her pain and said nothing. Every day she worked, hoping someone would notice, someone would speak up. But the villagers only saw what Zalima wanted them to see, a happy family. Behind closed doors, Mbuya suffered in silence. Yet, even in all the pain, Mbuya's heart didn't turn bitter. She cried sometimes. Yes, she whispered prayers into the night, asking her late mother for strength, but she never lost her kindness. Deep inside, a flame still burned, a quiet hope that one day the truth would come out. One day, she would no longer be the servant. She would no longer be stepped on, and the people who turned her world dark would see her rise, stronger than ever before. The air in Kibana buzzed with excitement. Colorful fabrics waved in the wind, drums echoed from every corner, and the smell of roasted yam and fresh spices filled the village. It was time for the annual cultural festival, a celebration that brought music, dance, and joy to every heart. But this year, the festival was even more special because Prince Tajure of the great kingdom of Delora was visiting. People came from nearby villages just to catch a glimpse of him, the handsome and noble prince known for his wisdom and charm. Zelima and Kasira, of course, were thrilled. They spent days preparing, choosing their best outfits, practicing their smiles, and imagining themselves standing beside the prince. Zalima even told Chief Runda, Kasira must sit in the front row. She should be seen by the prince. Mbuya, on the other hand, wasn't allowed to join the celebrations. Zalima told her to stay behind the scenes, sweeping the compound and serving food. She wore an old wrapper and her hands were covered in ash from cooking. "You're not fit to be seen," Kasira mocked. "Don't embarrass us." But fate had its own plans. During the festival, Prince Tajure walked through the village with his guards, greeting people and enjoying the sights. As he passed the stalls, his eyes scanned the crowd. Everyone smiled and bowed, hoping to catch his attention. Zalima pushed Kasira forward, and she waved dramatically, pretending to trip so the prince might notice her. But his eyes didn't stop there. Across the courtyard, near a cooking fire, stood Mbuya. She wasn't trying to be noticed. She was pouring water into a pot, her face calm, her movements graceful. Her clothes were plain, but there was something in her posture, so quiet, so steady, that made her stand out without trying. Prince Tajura paused. "Who is that girl?" he asked. A guard replied, "Just a servant, Your Highness." But Tajure's curiosity was stirred. "A servant," he repeated, still watching her. There was no fear or greed in her eyes, just calm strength. He watched how she helped an elder walk across the courtyard, how she offered her own food to a crying child, how she smiled gently even when no one was looking. That moment stayed with him. Later that evening, At the palace feast, many girls tried to impress the prince. They danced, they laughed loudly, they spoke of beauty and fame. But Tajere wasn't interested. His mind kept going back to the girl in the background, the one in ashes, not gold, the one who didn't try to shine, yet glowed like a quiet flame. He didn't know her name yet, but something told him she was different, and somehow, he knew. Their paths were just beginning to cross. The moment Prince Tajere began asking questions about the quiet girl near the cooking fire, something dark stirred in Kasira's heart. Envy wrapped around her like a snake. She had worn her finest beads, painted her lips red, danced in front of the prince, yet he barely noticed her. But Mbuya, dirty, unnoticed, forgotten Mbuya, had caught his eye without even trying. That night, Kasira couldn't sleep. Her jealousy burned like fire, and she whispered to her mother, "Zelima, if Mbuya stays in this house, I will never get the prince's attention." Zelima, wicked as always, didn't hesitate. "Then we must make sure she disappears," she whispered, with a cruel smile. The next day, while Chief Runda was away and the house was quiet, Kasira pretended to be kind. She offered Mbuya a leftover yam cake and said, "Let's go gather some herbs near the edge of the forest. I found something special near the well of Nyaka." Mbuya, though tired and cautious, agreed. She had no reason to suspect her stepsister's deadly intentions. The well of Nyaka was old, deep, and surrounded by thick bushes. Long ago, it was sealed off after a child fell in, and villagers whispered stories about spirits that lived in its shadows. As the two girls walked toward it, the air grew still. Mbuya bent down to pick a leaf when, without warning, Kasira shoved her from behind, hard. Mbuya screamed as she fell, her voice echoing into the darkness. Then, silence. Kasira stood there, breathing heavily, staring into the black hole. Her hands trembled, not from guilt, but from fear of being caught. She quickly scattered the nearby bushes, broke Mbuya's sandal, and ran home with fake tears in her eyes. "Mbuya!" she cried, bursting into the compound. "She ran away. I tried to stop her. I told her to stay, but she said she was tired of being treated like a servant." Zelima rushed to hug her, playing the concerned mother. "Oh, dear child, don't blame yourself," she said loudly, making sure the neighbors heard. "Mbuya was always too proud." Chief Runda returned and was devastated. He searched the village for days. The villagers shook their heads and said, "Maybe she ran away to another town." But no one thought to look near the old well. The story was sealed, just like the fate Kasira thought she gave Mbuya. But little did they know, Mbuya was not gone. She was alive, lying bruised and unconscious at the bottom of the well. Her breath was faint, her body weak, but her spirit had not given up. The same quiet strength that once caught a prince's eye was still burning inside her. And though the world believed she had disappeared, the story was far from over. Mbuya would rise again, and when she did, those who betrayed her would face a truth darker than the well they threw her into. As Mbuya lay at the bottom of the ancient well, bruised and broken, her life hung by a thread. The darkness surrounded her, but in the deepest part of her despair, a strange feeling washed over her, a sense of hope she couldn't explain. Hours, maybe days passed, until the distant sound of leaves rustling and birds calling filled the air. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't alone. Standing before her was an old man, his face marked with age, but his eyes sparkled with a wisdom that could pierce through the hardest of hearts. He was Elder Gidamu, a mysterious healer who had lived in the deep, untouched forest for years, far from the village. Elder Gidamu had heard the cries of a broken soul and followed them to the well. With his immense strength, he carefully pulled Mbuya out, treating her wounds with herbs that smelled of the forest and felt like a balm to her tortured body. She had no words for him, just a quiet gratitude in her eyes as she lay there, listening to the rustling leaves and the quiet hum of the forest around her. Under Elder Gidamu's care, Mbuya began to heal, but it wasn't just her body that he mended. He taught her the ways of the forest, the secrets of the plants, the knowledge of the earth, and the art of healing that had been passed down through generations. Mbuya learned how to create powerful potions from the herbs around her, how to bind wounds with natural remedies, and how to calm a troubled heart with the peaceful rhythms of nature. Elder Gidamu also spoke of strength, not just physical strength, but mental and emotional strength. He showed her how to embrace the pain of her past and use it to fuel her future. "The forest does not grow without its storms," he told her. "You must learn to bend with the wind, but never break." These words resonated deeply within Mbuya's soul. She realized that everything she had endured, her suffering, her betrayal, her brokenness, had all been lessons that would guide her in her new life. The more she learned, the stronger she became, not just in her healing abilities, but in her resolve. Mbuya understood that she was no longer the same fragile girl who had been pushed into the well. She was now a woman of strength, wisdom, and power, capable of standing up for herself and others. But most of all, she had found her purpose: to return to her village, expose the lies, and seek justice for all who had been wronged, just as she had. As weeks passed, Mbuya's transformation was complete. The woman who had once been weak and broken was now a force to be reckoned with. She had learned the ways of the healer, and more importantly, she had learned how to heal herself. And with her newfound strength, she was ready to return to Kibana and face the people who had wronged her. The sun rose gently over Kibana as the village prepared for another grand cultural festival. Drums beat softly in the distance, traders set up their colorful stalls, and laughter filled the air. It was just like the festival 2 years ago, the one that changed everything. The people were excited, the same way they had been when Prince Tajuri last visited. But today, someone else was coming, someone no one expected to see ever again. A fine carriage rolled slowly through the village gates, pulled by strong white horses. The villagers gathered, their eyes wide. From the carriage stepped a stunning woman dressed in flowing golden fabric, her face hidden beneath a delicate veil. Her posture was regal, her steps full of quiet power. She walked with confidence, yet with kindness in her eyes. No one recognized her, not even Zelima and Kasira, who stood near the stage in their best outfits, hoping once again to charm the prince. But this mysterious woman was Mbuya. She had survived the fall. At the bottom of the well, broken and barely alive, she was rescued by Elder Gidamu, the secret healer of the forest. He had nursed her back to life and taught her how to heal, how to listen to the forest, how to read people's hearts. She had learned strength, not just of the body, but of the soul. Gone was the girl who used to cry in silence. She had become a woman of wisdom, grace, and quiet fire. And now, she was back. As she walked through Kibana, people whispered, "Who is she? A princess from another land? Maybe a queen in disguise?" But no one imagined it was the same Mbuya they had once ignored or pitied. Zelima squinted, sensing something familiar but couldn't place it. Kasira rolled her eyes, jealous already. "She thinks she can outshine me," she whispered to her mother. "Wait till Prince Tajure sees me again." But Mbuya had not come for revenge. She had come to reclaim her place, not just in her family, but in the hearts of the people who once forgot her. When Prince Tajura arrived, the drums stopped. He looked around, remembering the last time he was here. His eyes scanned the crowd, and then they stopped. On her, the veiled woman. Something about her presence stirred something deep within him. He couldn't explain it, but it was as if his heart remembered what his eyes could not. He stepped forward, drawn to her like a moth to flame. Mbuya raised her eyes to meet his, and in that silent moment, everything changed. She was no longer the forgotten servant girl. She was now the woman who had faced death, risen through fire, and returned in glory, and Kibana would never be the same again. The air was thick with anticipation as the festival reached its peak. The village gathered in the central square, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. The moment everyone had been talking about all day had finally arrived. The mysterious woman in golden fabric, the one who had caught Prince Tajure's attention, was about to speak. No one knew who she truly was, but all eyes were on her, and whispers filled the air. Was she royalty, a noble woman from a distant land, or someone far more familiar than they realized? Mbuya stood in the center of the crowd, her back straight and her eyes steady. The prince, still entranced by her grace, stood a few steps behind her, watching silently. She had come back for one reason: to make things right, to reveal the truth. With a soft but powerful voice, Mbuya spoke, addressing the entire village. "I stand before you today, not as a stranger, but as a daughter of Kibana." A hushed murmur swept through the crowd. People turned to each other, confused, wondering what she meant. She lifted her veil, and gasps filled the air. The face that looked back at them wasn't just a beautiful stranger. It was Mbuya, the same girl who had once lived in their village, the same girl they thought had disappeared forever. Zalima's face turned pale. Kasira's eyes widened with fear. They had never expected this. They tried to look away, but it was too late. Mbuya's words were like a storm, impossible to ignore. "I was once your servant, Mbuya continued, her voice now steady and clear. I was pushed into the well of Nyaka, betrayed by my own stepsister and stepmother, but I survived. I didn't die, and now I am here to tell you all what happened. The village was silent, all eyes locked on Mbuya as she told her story. She spoke of the years of mistreatment, of being treated as nothing more than a servant in her own home. She revealed how Kasira had pushed her into the well, how Zalima had been complicit in the cruelty, all to hide their jealousy and greed. As she spoke, the people of Kibana began to realize just how wrong they had been. They had allowed Mbuya to suffer in silence, never questioning the lies they were fed. The prince stepped forward, his eyes never leaving Mbuya. This cannot be true, he said softly, his voice filled with disbelief. But Mbuya nodded, her gaze unwavering. It is true, she said, and it is time for the truth to be known. No one should suffer in silence. No one should be cast aside because of jealousy or greed. With each word, the lies of Zalima and Kasira unraveled before the entire village. Chief Runda, who had been standing in the back, took a step forward, his face filled with regret and shame. He had been blind to the truth, but now it was too clear to ignore. The crowd, once unsure of Mbuya's story, now began to murmur in anger and disbelief. They had been deceived. They had been part of the lie. Zalima and Kasira tried to defend themselves, but the damage was done. The truth was out, and nothing could change that. Mbuya had come back not just to reclaim her place, but to expose the evil that had tried to destroy her. As the prince looked at her with admiration and respect, Mbuya knew that her journey wasn't just about surviving. It was about standing tall in the face of injustice and showing the world that no one, not even betrayal, could define her. As Mbuya's words echoed through the village, the atmosphere shifted from disbelief to growing anger. The truth had been exposed, and the lies of Zalima and Kasira lay bare for all to see. The people of Kibana, who had once respected and trusted them, now looked at the pair with contempt. How could they have been so blind? How could they have allowed such cruelty to happen under their very noses? Zalima and Kasira stood frozen, their faces pale with fear and shame. The once proud woman who had manipulated her way into the chief's life now stood humiliated, her false elegance gone. Kasira, the spoiled daughter who had tormented Mbuya for years, looked like a child caught in the worst kind of lie. The villagers, once so quick to admire them, now saw them for who they truly were: deceitful, cruel, and heartless. Whispers spread through the crowd, turning into murmurs of outrage. How could they do this? They treated her like dirt, like she wasn't even human. The anger grew, and the villagers began to turn away from them. The same people who had once smiled at Zalima in the market now looked at her with disgust. Even the children, who had once adored her for her status, now jeered at her. "Zalima!" a villager shouted, his voice filled with fury. "Kasira, you will pay for what you did to Mbuya." The words stung, but they were nothing compared to the weight of the truth that now hung in the air. The villagers no longer wanted to hear their excuses, no longer cared for their promises of change. They had turned their backs on them for good. Mbuya, standing tall in the center of the crowd, did not flinch. She had come to reclaim her life, not for revenge, but for justice, and justice had been served. Zalima and Kasira had caused enough pain, enough suffering. Now it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. With a final cold stare, the chief, Mbuya's own father, stepped forward, his heart heavy with regret. He had been blind to the truth, but now he saw clearly. "Zalima, Kasira," he said, his voice low and firm, "you are no longer welcome here. Your actions have caused harm to my daughter and to this village. You must leave." The two women were banished, exiled from the village they had once controlled. Their lives, once filled with luxury and deceit, now faced a harsh reality. The villagers watched in silence as Zalima and Kasira were forced to leave Kibana, their heads lowered in shame. No one spoke to them as they walked away, disappearing into the wilderness, where they would live out their days alone and rejected by all. As the gates of Kibana closed behind them, Mbuya stood strong, watching them fade into the distance. The village was free of their lies, and she too was free, free to start anew, free to live without the shadow of their cruelty hanging over her. And as the wind blew gently through the trees, it seemed to whisper a message to all who had witnessed this moment. Sometimes the truth may be painful, but it always leads to freedom. The village of Kibana was buzzing with excitement as the day of Prince Tajure's wedding arrived. The festival that had once been filled with confusion and whispers was now a celebration of justice, truth, and love. All eyes were on Mbuya, the woman who had come back from the depths of betrayal to claim her rightful place. The prince stood by her side, his eyes filled with admiration and respect. The two were a symbol of triumph, proof that even the darkest betrayals could lead to the brightest of futures. Mbuya, now a graceful and powerful woman, wore a crown that sparkled in the sun. She looked every bit the queen she was destined to be. But it wasn't just her beauty that captivated the people. It was her strength, her wisdom, and her unwavering sense of justice. She had risen from the well, both literally and figuratively, to become a beacon of hope for her people. Her story had touched everyone in the village, and now they looked to her not just as a queen, but as a symbol of resilience and courage. As she stood before the gathered villagers and guests, Mbuya's voice rang out, calm and steady. "I stand here today, not just as a queen, but as a woman who has been shaped by every hardship, every lie, and every act of betrayal. And because of that, I vow to rule with fairness, to protect the weak, and to ensure that no one else ever suffers as I did." Her words were met with cheers and applause, for they knew she meant every word. The prince, who had fallen in love with her for the woman she was, not for her beauty, her title, or her wealth, smiled proudly beside her. Their love was real, built on trust and mutual respect, not on power or manipulation. In the past, Mbuya's life had been marred by deceit, but now she had found a true partner in Tajure. Together, they would lead the land to a new era, one of peace, equality, and justice. As the celebration continued, the villagers cheered for their new queen. No longer would they be ruled by those who sought only their own gain. Mbuya had shown them that true strength came from within, that justice came from standing up for what was right, and that no matter the odds, a person could rise above their circumstances and change the world. Mbuya's rise was a tale that would be told for generations to come. She had been the girl who had fallen into the depths of despair, but had emerged stronger, wiser, and more powerful than anyone could have imagined. And now, as Queen Mbuya, she would lead with the same resilience that had carried her through her darkest days. Her reign would be remembered not for the wealth or power she held, but for the kindness, fairness, and justice that defined her. The people of Kibana had witnessed her journey, and they knew that this was just the beginning. The girl who had been cast aside, the girl who had risen from the well, was now their queen, ready to rule, ready to change their world, and ready to lead with love and wisdom. What an incredible journey we've witnessed today. Mbuya's rise from the depths of despair to become the queen she was always meant to be. From being betrayed by those she loved to finding the strength within herself to fight for justice. Mbuya's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the path, there is always light at the end. Her courage, resilience, and unwavering spirit are lessons we can all take to heart. If Mbuya's journey touched your soul and you believe that justice, love, and strength can triumph over any obstacle, then I encourage you to share this story with others. Let's spread the message of hope, strength, and perseverance together. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment below with your thoughts on Mbuya's inspiring story. Your support helps us create more meaningful content that empowers and uplifts. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more heartwarming tales that remind us all to keep pushing forward, no matter the challenges we face. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, just like Mbuya, you too can rise above it all. Stay strong.